Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you are new and you've never seen a video of mine before. My name's Melissa and I hope you guys stay around and subscribe. Can I help you? Today's video, as you guys can see from the title, I am going to be doing a what I've read since the beginning of January. If you guys were watching my channel back in January, you will have known that in one of my vlogs I kind of mentioned that I wanted to talk more about the books that I've been reading this year. But my problem is I'm a very slow reader, so I don't read that many books every single month. Now that's a little bit of a different story. I read a ton a month. But the last 3 months I haven't read a ton. So I decided to pile all 3 months, January, February, and March, into one video and to just basically discuss the books that I've been reading for the past 3 months with you guys. I wanted to film in front of my mini little bookshelf, but it's not really a bookshelf, it's literally just my TV stand. Speaking of bookshelf, a couple of you have commented wanting me to do a bookshelf tour, but I don't really have a proper bookshelf. But I'm actually going shopping at IKEA next weekend for a bookshelf, so I am gonna probably do a vlog on getting a bookshelf and kind of like organizing all my books on my bookshelf, and then I'll do a bookshelf tour. Anyways, without further ado, let's get into today's video because there are quite a lot of books I have to talk about with you guys. Okay, so starting off with January, the first month I read 2 books in January. The first book being Picking Cotton. This is a memoir of injustice and redemption. If you guys were subscribed to me back in January, you will have heard me talk about this book a little bit. I actually met the woman who co-wrote this book my freshman year of college at GVSU. She basically did this kind of like panel thing where we were allowed to come and like hear her story and ask questions. And I originally went to this panel for extra credit, not really expecting anything like whatsoever. Did this for an extra credit opportunity because my grades were awful. So I went to this panel, and this woman, also trigger warning, gonna talk about some like sensitive topics. I'll put the trigger warnings up here. If you don't want to listen to this, skip to this time. Anyways, as I was saying, she basically told her story of how she was raped back in her college days, and the guy that she identified as her rapist was actually not her rapist, and he was wrongfully convicted for this crime. So basically this book is in the POV of Jennifer Thompson, which is our victim, but also Ronald Cotton, which is also why it's called Picking Cotton, because she picks him in the line. You get the point. Anyways, told in this POV of both Jennifer Thompson and Ronald Cotton, who is the wrongfully convicted man who was basically in prison for a whole entire decade for a crime he did not commit. When I went to this panel, basically only Jennifer Thompson was talking, so she was telling her side of the story. However, in the book, I want to say more than like half of the book you get to see Ronald Cotton's point of view of being wrongfully convicted and spending his decade in prison and what that was like for him, and it was truly like a very like interesting, you know, read. And the thing is it's not fantasy, it's not, you know, fiction. Like this is real, like this is real life. And I think that's why I liked it so much, because you can see, like, we know the justice system can fail victims, but I feel like the one thing that is not talked about a lot in the justice system is how the justice system fails those who are wrongfully convicted. Like, those who are wrongfully convicted are also victims. This book was really, really interesting to read, and it kind of puts into perspective like just how messed up like the whole investigating process can be, and how messed up the criminal justice system can be, and just like how racially motivated it was. If you guys are into kind of more true crime and injustices, I really, really do recommend reading this book. Again, trigger warnings, talks about rape and sexual assault. I definitely gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars. Yeah, this was my first read of the month. The second book I read in January was One of Us is Lying, a classic. I actually first saw this book on Ava Jewell's channel, and it looked super, super interesting. She raved about it for a while, so I was like, all right, you know what? I want to get my hands on it. There is just so much to say about this book. It is one of those books that kind of leaves you shocked. You think you know the ending, and then it does a 360, and then you're shocked. One of the things I did find like very like odd in this book is like there's a tiny romance in this book, but it is like kind of just like put in there, and then it's like not mentioned a lot much after that. Like there's like a little tiny scene of like romance and then nothing else. So I found that kind of odd, but the characters were really interesting. Plot twist at the end I did not expect. I think I finished this book in like a week, I want to say, maybe less, because I liked it so much. So I just kept reading it and reading it and reading it. And I was also, I think I was on break during the time that I was reading this. Highly recommend this. This is more of like a murder mystery type book. So if you're into like murder mysteries and thrillers, I definitely recommend One of Us is Lying. There's actually a sequel called One of Us is Next that I've yet to read, but it's on my TBR to read. I would rate this a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Okay, moving on to the month of February. In the month of February, I finally started the Harry Potter series. I know what the comments are gonna be. You've never read Harry Potter? No, I haven't. As a kid, I was always like really behind in reading comprehension, so I never got the opportunity to read the Harry Potter book. I've always been obsessed with the movies, always wanted to go to freaking Universal. I've never freaking been to Universal. Yeah, I finally started reading all of the Harry Potter books. I finally got my hands on like all 7 of them. 5 of them were secondhand bought. 2 of them I had to buy firsthand because I couldn't find them anywhere else. I read the first one in the month of February and I really liked it. It was a little hard to get through just because I feel like the first 2 movies I've seen like so much that like I know the story to it, and so when I was reading the first 2 books it was kind of just like a little boring in my opinion. Like in my opinion, the movies don't truly get good until number 3 and 4. Like that is when things start taking off. Anyways, besides the point, I read the first book and there were some minor differences I saw from reading the book and seeing the movie. We meet Peeves in the books, which we don't see in the movies, and that was a really interesting character. And also I just feel like there's a lot more detail and a lot more imagination to the books than I feel like there was to the movies. Obviously the movies are like live action imagination, but like when you read it you have like your own imagination of like what this world looks like. Also, can we just talk about the literal disheveled spine this first book has? Like I'm not even kidding. This has been like a hand-me-down in my family for like years and years. So when it came to me, the spine was already broken, and I'm eventually going to replace this one with all hardcovers. Hopefully I can find them secondhand, I hope. Yeah, read the first Harry Potter book, really liked it. That's all I have to say about that. I feel like we all know the story of Harry Potter. Like there's nothing more I can say. The second book I read in February was a book that's been on my TBR and that I've been looking at for quite a long time. Been very excited to read it, and I was not disappointed, even though I feel like everyone is disappointed by this book. So my opinion might not be your opinion on this book. The second book I read in the month of February was We Were Liars. I have heard such slander about this book. Some people were saying that like it's super predictable, like you can predict the ending. Personally, I could not predict the ending, and I cannot go super into detail about this book without spoiling the ending. So if you are interested in like mystery type of books, this is the book to read. I think it was really good. It's also a standalone, so if you kind of need a book to get you out of a reading slump, or you don't really want to read a series, I do recommend reading this just because it's super fast. I finished this in literally 24 hours. Kid you not, finish the book in 24 hours. Basically, we follow along in the POV of Caddy, which is our main person in the story. There are other like main characters, so to say, in the story, but she is the one that we get the POV from in this story. I've seen a lot of people on TikTok compare this book to, if you liked the show The Outer Banks, that you would like We Were Liars. Don't listen to those people. And I don't mean this is like a hate thing or whatever, but the show The Outer Banks and the book We Were Liars are absolutely nothing alike. I understand if they wanted to compare it because of the summer aspect to it and the kind of like free kind of aspect to it on like an island, but other than that, they're nothing alike. Absolutely nothing alike. I remember talking about this book on an Instagram story of mine back in February. I would more closely relate this to the show Revenge, but I thought it was really interesting. I also thought the writing style was really interesting, how it went back and forth between present day and, you know, before the accident, because basically Caddy has an accident and she can't remember what happened summer of 15, I want to say, 17, 16. One of those three. But basically she has this accident and she can't remember what happened the years prior. She ends up coming back to the island and everything's kind of different, and while she's on the island she's figuring out like why she lost her memory and like basically what happened. I really recommend this book. I give it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I was left shocked at the ending. It's a good book, but it's not one of those books where it's like, I was shocked for like a couple hours after, but like after that I was fine. So moving on to March, the month of March. The first book I read in March is actually Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. This one took me forever to get through, once again just because the first 2 books in my opinion are not all that interesting, along with the movies. I saw minor differences between the movie and the book of Chamber of Secrets, and it was really interesting to see, but other than that it was pretty consistent with the movie and the book. It was really interesting. I liked it. 5 out of 5 stars. The second book I read in the month of March is actually a book that I featured in my 24-hour readathon, and you guys saw me read it. You guys saw my reactions to it, and now I'm here to talk about it. The second book I read in the month of March was The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. As you guys can see, there's tons of tabs in this book because I have a lot to say about this book. We follow along in the POV of 2 people in this book. For the first half of the book, we follow along in Addie LaRue's point of view, and we kind of switch back and forth between her time that she was originally born in, and then we also fast forward to another POV of her in 2014 New York. So we go back and forth between 2 kind of time periods, present and past. We get the past POV basically to understand like the initial, you know, years of her curse and how she like lived life, and then current point of view we kind of see like where and how she's living now. I think the most interesting part of this book was kind of like reading how she had to essentially survive, so to say, the first like couple decades of her life with this curse. Hi, I wanted to cut in really quickly because I'm like editing this right now, but I wanted to cut in here really quickly and also like bring attention to another aspect of the book I really liked. I tabbed a lot of things, like a lot of quotes that I liked, mainly just because it put into perspective like what she went through those initial years of her curse. She would often describe the world that she lived in as a man's world, and how it was so much easier to get by living as a man because in those initial years, like the 1700s, 1800s, 1900s, it was a man's world. Like, you cannot tell me it wasn't a man's world. The world was designed for men to succeed, and women were only seen as objects to bear children and keep the house alive. So it was just really interesting, you know, like reading about how she felt those initial years and how it like time change kind of like shifted over into like the 90s, how like women, you know, were finally able to like be their own person and not just like be sold off to being married. So I thought that aspect of the book was also really interesting. She can't die, but she still suffers, which is so interesting. Like, that's such an interesting aspect of her curse. Like I said, I think that was like one of the most interesting aspects of reading about her curse and like her kind of like life story and life journey, is how she essentially had to get by to survive. The second POV we meet in this book is actually Henry, the guy who remembers her, and trust me, that's not a spoiler. We see a little glimpse of his life, and then we eventually see how they come together. The twist in this story, I really wasn't expecting it. First, like 150 pages are really hard to get through because it's a lot of character and plot building, but after the initial like 150 or so pages, consistently smooth sailing from there, especially once you get like past part 3, because this book is divided up into parts. So once you get past like part 3, it keeps climaxing and climaxing. One of my other favorite things about this book is just the writing style and how like detailed the writing was in this. Like, it was so clear cut to the point. The ending of this book absolutely tore me to shreds, as you guys probably saw if you watched the 24-hour readathon, which if you haven't, click up here to go watch it. But as you guys can see in like my reaction to finishing this book, I literally bawled. Yeah, I give this book a 5 out of 5. I definitely think it's worth the read at least once, even if you're like on the verge of like thinking of reading it, but like you're not entirely sure. It is worth it for the end. If you've read any of her other books, leave a recommendation down below what to read next of her books, because I'm a fan. And lastly, the last book I read in the month of March, which I also didn't finish, but I'm still gonna feature it in this video because I'm a little under halfway through it. The book I read was, oh, there's absolutely no cover on this. It's The Shadows Between Us. I've only read like the first 10 chapters of it, but within the first 10 chapters, it's very interesting. But the only thing that's kind of a turn-off about this book is it kind of reads like a Wattpad book. They described this book as the Slytherin romance we've all been waiting for, which again is what initially brought me into buying this book and reading it. So I'm really hoping that it still lives up to my expectations, but at the moment it's not living up to my expectations. I feel like the romance and the characters are really underdeveloped at the moment, and again, I'm only on chapter 10. I don't know, it reads so much like a Wattpad book and it just feels super underdeveloped by chapter 10 still. Of course, I'm gonna finish this book and I have not tabbed anything in it yet, and I don't think I'm going to, just because it's so short and I feel like I could remember, you know, what happens in the book. When I finish this book, I will definitely let you guys know my rating of it and how I feel about it completely, but at the moment, I would really only rate this book a 3 out of 5 stars. Anyways, that is all the books that I've read from January to March. I'm currently still reading The Shadows Between Us, like I just said, but I also have started the Shadow and Bone trilogy, and I'm going to start on the Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom duology after that for the show that comes out on April 23rd. Anyways, yeah, those are all the books I've read for the last like 3 months, and I think from now on I'm gonna do like a monthly kind of update of all the books I've read each month, just because I have bought so many books. This is also the last month of my semester, which means I'm gonna have a lot more time to read books in the summertime, so I feel like doing monthly uploads of everything that I've read that month would be a lot more beneficial for me. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe down below if you haven't already. I've gained so many new people on this channel and it's just nuts to me. Thank you guys all so much for your support. I have just recently become monetized on YouTube too, and that is like all due to you guys for like watching my videos and supporting me. So thank you guys so much from the bottom of my heart. It means the entire world to me. It's been it's been a goal for the past like 2 years for me, so the fact that it like happened this past week, bizarre to me. Bizarre, so bizarre. With that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video and I will see you guys all on Friday. Bye guys. Oh, it's like all watered down now. It's so good.
I used to take myself out on dates, open my own damn doors, pay for everything on my plate. Sometimes I'd even get the steak, cause I got it like that. Always had my own bag, never needed no man to rely on. Got 2 good shoulders to cry on.